Hello, everyone. Welcome to the COPM training webinar for the NGOs who are partnering with Amar, Seva, Sangam for the Enabling Inclusion app. My name is Brien. I'm the Assistant Director of Research and Capacity Building at Amar, Seva, Sangam. And I'm joined by Franzina Coutinho, who is our Director of Research. So I would just like to welcome Kiran Society, Shishu Sahwati, and Udbas to our program. So the objectives for today will be to review the principles of family-centered care as the COPM is used because it is a family-centered goal-setting tool. Secondly, we will do a quick overview of the ICF and the F words for child development, just so we can have the total child in mind when we look at the COPM. So we will review what the ICF and F words tell us for child development. Then we will do a step-by-step review of the COPM. We will have many case studies that I will share with you and discuss the goal setting and the scoring. And lastly, we will have time for questions and discussion. So let's look at what family-centered care is.
So one thing we all have to recognize when we do the COPM is that the family is a constant in a child's life. And we have the reason why we need to engage with the family to develop goals and to develop collaboration is that we really want to have the best meaningful goals for the family and to enhance collaboration. We want to respect and honor all the different racial, ethnic, cultural, socioeconomic diversity of all the families that we see. Wherever we are, we really want to honor what is meaningful to them. So we want to recognize each family's strength, their individuality, and we want to respect that each family has different means of coping with their child's developmental delay or disabilities. So each family is unique. So that's why the COPM will be so important, because we really want to see what is important in their eyes. So we also, family-centered care involves sharing of complete and unbiased information with families on a continuous basis. So we really need to know what's important to them and also to share the information of how their child's doing on a regular basis. We want to encourage and facilitate also family-to-family support and networking. And we want to respond to the child's developmental needs. So family-centered service recognizes that each family is unique, that the family is a constant in the child's life, and that the parents are the experts on the child's needs. Parents are not therapists, they aren't specialists, but they are the one that spend the whole day with the child, have come to know their child best. So they are considered the experts on what their child needs and their abilities, and often a great resource, the best resource that we need to question them about what they feel their child is important to them in terms of activities, skills, and abilities. So a quick review of the ICF, which I will not go into depth. But when we develop goals with the family, we really want to consider all elements of the ICF, body structure and function, and then we want to look at the activities or everyday function of the child. All the in activity, we have walking, eating, talking, dressing, everything that you must do for every day. Participation is the involvement in meaningful life activities. So we have to make it meaningful for the child. And then we always have to consider the environmental factors. The environment can be physical, can be attitudinal, can be social. So all the context that surrounds the child, when we go to form goals and discuss priorities with families, we have to consider the environment you're living in, and then personal factors. There are personal factors of the age, the gender, the socioeconomic status of both child and parents, and also what motivates them, what is meaningful to them. So just to keep in mind all the elements of the ICF, which really guides child development, guides all the components of disability. So, and for any of us, it's our guide. Just want to minimize them. All right, so let's look now at what is important in child development, the F words. And you must have all heard about the F words. So the F words are function, family, fitness, friends, fun, and future. I will just minimize myself here. And why those areas are important is that all those elements are all part or joined with the ICF. And I'm just going to hide. Okay. So this is something we want to keep in mind when we develop and discuss what is meaningful goals and priorities with the family, with the COPM. We want to keep in mind that all those are part and parcel of child development. These are all what makes a person, not just child development. It can be an adult, it can be a teenager, school age going child. So what they've done here is that they've put all the F words that were developed along with the ICF. And this is a meaningful framework to guide us in our practice. So, and a very important one. So I just want to present this for you to keep in mind that body structure and function, when we think of a child, a person, anyone, is what helps us to keep fit and healthy. And body structure and function in a child with a disability might involve like muscle strength, muscle tone, cardiovascular endurance. It's anything that will help to keep them in the best physical and best status for their body functions. Then when we look at activity, often the red in the center, the function, is where we might find many of our goals, because those are the functional everyday goals of what families often wish is things that they must do for everyday life. And it's important that they learn to do those activities, even if they do them differently. Participation becomes friends. It's anything that's where children are involved in meaningful life activities. And for children, it's involvement with friends. It's activities that they might be doing with their siblings, with their peers. So we have to keep our goals in mind, that they're functional goals, that they will be participating with others. Then at the bottom, we have our context. We have to consider that the family is the environmental context for a child. That's where they are till they go to school, is in the context of the family. So we have to consider the physical environment. Any goal that requires some physical adaptation to the home to achieve a goal, we need to consider. We need to consider the attitudes, the environmental, the attitudinal factors, the social environment. So family is crucial to a young child. And then lastly, the other context is with the personal factor. What type of child are we dealing with, and what type of family? How are they coping? What motivates the child in terms of a goal? So very important to keep this whole framework of the ICF and the F word in mind when we discuss what parents wish for their children, their priorities and their goals. So this is just a different way to present the framework. So I just want you to keep in mind the whole person, the whole child when we discuss children with the parents. So I just wanted to show you the various posters for the F words, which you may be familiar with. And I also put, I hope this is the Hindi one. Because yes, the F words posters have been translated into many languages and also many different Indian languages. So we will get started with the COPM, but I just felt it was important to give you a bit of that holistic background. I'm just going to try to get my picture back here. Okay. Okay, so let's look. Okay, so let's look at what we need to keep in mind when doing the COPM is that the family's understanding and their involvement in the intervention program is really key to the success of our home-based early intervention program. So we really need to engage the family in understanding and being involved in all the elements of the program. So that's why the COPM is so important. That's why the COPM has been chosen, because it allows the parents and the caregivers to identify the problems and the needs and to prioritize which goals are most important to them. Okay, and it guides the parents and we need to guide them in understanding the process of development and also improvement in performance. Parents might not understand that you cannot learn to walk right away. You have to learn to first roll, sit, crawl, and stand before you walk. So we need sometimes to engage in getting parents understanding the whole process of development and all the stepping stones that are needed to achieve a goal. And why the COPM is so important is that it's really based on the parents' self-perception of performance of everyday activities. And it's their satisfaction of that performance. And very interesting, some parents might have different perceptions of the same performance of how their children are doing. So what really matters is in the eyes of the parents, how they feel their child is doing and how satisfied they are. So we'll get started.
Can I just jump in at this point, Marie?
Yeah,
for a minute?
Sure, definitely.
So I think with parents across the board, whether it's Indian parents or parents in Canada, because they're interacting with their children all the time, it's really difficult for them to see change over time because they're so closely associated with it, right? So I think for that reason, it's really important to have a baseline assessment where you're using really simple words to identify what the goal is and what level their child is at. And when they come back for the reevaluation, like Marie said, you have to talk about which milestone comes first, how long the transition may take, may being the keyword, may take, and how during your reassessment, you need to verbalize that, your child was at 2 on, X on Y when we started intervention, and now they're doing Y on Y, which means that there is an improvement. You might not be able to observe or rate it as well as I could because I'm seeing him after 3 months or whatever. But I think highlighting the positive as well as the negative is equally important. I just wanted to add that at this point. Thanks.
Yeah, so we need to consider what are the challenges in using the COPM. Often service providers are not used to asking caregivers to set goals. The old medical model of care was more the therapist would assess the child and set their own goals and not necessarily involve the parents in setting goals. And also, on the other hand, the caregivers are not used to being asked for their opinions. So it may be challenging to manage, and also the other thing is that it may be challenging to manage unrealistic caregiver expectations when they have their priorities and goals are not realistic for the child's abilities or developmental level. So those are things to consider. So that's why us service providers really need to be skilled in asking caregivers about what they want for their child. And also we have to realize it's new for parents to be really asked about what they feel they want for their child. So the COPM is a family-centered outcome measure. And it's used in over 40 countries, and it's been translated into 35 languages. And I just checked last, the only language that in India that it's been officially translated in is Canada. I don't see a Hindi translation unless it's in development. It is conducted through a personalized semi-structured interview. So we really need to know how to interview the family, how to ask the questions to gather the best information possible. And what it's designed to do, it's designed to identify important daily life problems experienced by the child and family. So that's why we really need to just put ourselves into that family's life and ask them about their daily routine, the daily problems that they encounter with the child, and go from there. So it's really an open conversation with the family on what is important to them. The therapist asks parents about the child's daily routine, everyday living, such as mobility, self-care, play, and leisure. So it's really the best family-centered approach to discuss child functional daily activities. So that's why the COPM is used so broadly, but we need to know how to properly administer it and get the most out of it. Yeah, so these are the official, this is from the COPM guide. I think we're going to go through all the elements of this, how to identify problem areas. They use the term occupational performance, and that's a bit of I find a complex term to use. I would not use that term with families, occupational performance. I would say more everyday activities. And then it provides a rating of the family's priorities in what activities they choose for the child. And here we use sometimes the word client. Now, who is our client? Our client, our patient, is really the child, but it's the child and family together because it's family-centered care. And at a certain age, when the child becomes, they say as soon as the child becomes school age or even preschool age, sometimes we can ask the child what they wish to do, what their priorities are. Certainly a school age child or as we get into adolescence, they should be the one doing the COPM. So it's progressive. We with a young child, it is the family, the parents who are the respondent, the parents who decide. But as time goes on, we should really see what's meaningful to the child themselves. And the COPM will evaluate the performance and satisfaction with those problems. It's the best goal setting tool, and we're going to measure their own perception of how their child's doing. And the word perception is very, very important. So it's different. Yeah.
Marie, I'm just going to jump in here. Especially for the age of a school-going child, like Marie said, from an ethical perspective, to ask for permission, it's typically 7 years old that we ask for assent. So a child in grade 2, right? We're not talking about ethics at this point, but I'm saying even in terms of what the choices they have and what they would like to do needs to be incorporated into goal setting. When a child is as young as 7, obviously as the therapist or as somebody who's in charge of, you know, facilitating goal setting, you need to consider what's important to the parents as well and streamline that. But I think the child's choice and choice making skills need to be considered for them to be active participants, right? So just putting that out there.
Thank you, Franzina. So let's look at the COPM steps. So what are the steps that we need to take? First, we need to identify the daily problems with the family. And that's number one, is really the interview with the family, this semi-structured interview. Identify what issues they have in their daily routine, in their day with the child. Next, we need to rate the importance of each of those functional problems. Next, we need to select the problems for scoring. Once we've rated them, we need to select and decide if in number 2 they had 6 different functional problems, and then they rate them. Well, then you might not keep all 6 of them. You might decide, okay, we will select these the top 3 or the top 4. So you select those that will become the goals. Next, you score the child's current performance and the parent's satisfaction with the child's current ability. And lastly, you reassess. It could be 6 months later, could be 3 months later, could be a year later. You determine at what point you reassess. It could even be 1 month later. If there's certain goals, it is to be determined with the family. But in the case of for the EI, I think the EI app, it's an every 6 month reassessment. So let's look at the interview process with the family. Am I clear when I speak to you? Okay, thank you. So the interview is when we ask the parents to think of a typical day with their child. So we first start the conversation when we go to the home or the clinic to do the COPM. We ask the parents to think of, we just engage them in thinking about a typical day with their children. And so that's why the COPM can be used in any country, any setting in the world, and because you put yourself into the families, you ask them about their life. We ask we have key questions that lead our interview. We ask them, okay, let's think, and sometimes you might even say, let's think about a typical morning with your child, things that your child needs to do every day or wants to do. You try to get them talking about their everyday. So the key questions are what the child wants to do. And sometimes you see that the child may want to be able to try to feed themselves, but they're having trouble, may want to play with their siblings, but having difficulty, may want to try to roll, to move. So all those different things that what the parent feels that their child seems to want to do. Or maybe we can ask the child, what is it that you want to be able to do but having difficulty with? We want to ask about what the child is starting to do. Okay, if the child is just starting to pull the stand or starting to want to dress themselves or starting to want to play with a certain item or starting to want to use words to express their needs. And oftentimes what the child is starting to do are great goals because it means that those skills are emerging. Okay, so they're just in a state that if we work on them, they will come through. Next. What the child needs to do or is required to do. Sometimes the child is expected to be able to walk to get to the toilet, or is expected to start to feed themselves, or things that the child needs to be able to do. The child needs to be able to maybe be sitting upright to be able to feed better. And it doesn't mean that the child may not be able to sit, but may need some assistive devices to help. But what is the child needs to be able to do or is required to do for everyday life? What the child is expected to do, but is unable to accomplish. So you see, there's some skills that the child may be starting to perform, like there are second line, what the child's starting to do, but there are some is what the child's expected to do, but unable to accomplish. And some goals might require some environmental adaptations, some equipment, assistive technology, assistive devices. So we need to consider some goals the child may not be able to achieve on his own, but with assistance. And lastly, what the parent wants their child to do. And sometimes that becomes a difficult area. Sometimes the parents may dream that their child will speak normally or play with others with good social skills, or will walk independently. And that's where we really want to make sure that parents' goals and what they want their child to do is realistic and developmentally appropriate. So those are just key questions to think about when engaging in a conversation with the families. And you can go through we will go through the daily activities and that way. So this is just the way the official directives of the COPM. And yeah, in red is what we just spoke about. What are occupational performance problems? Again, I tend to not use the word occupational. You can use the word occupational performance amongst yourselves, but I always, with families, I just talk about, you know, everyday activities, you know, for everyday function. Yeah, and then we will look at how we rate them and how we score the performance and satisfaction. So let's get started looking at the different areas of the COPM. So we have of course, the COPM was initially developed more to be used for adults, but we are also applying it in pediatric settings. And those are all, it covers all of the areas that are needed for everyday function for every human being. And we don't have to stick specifically to the wording that is indicated, but it's a guide. So when you have in the EI app, this is the official COPM form, but in the EI app, it's the similar format. What we indicate in terms of problems or areas that the family would like to work on, we indicate them under these general areas, but it does not have to be specifically related. These are broad titles to help us think about self-care, the personal care, functional mobility, and the community management. We will look at what this means for a child. When we talk about productivity for a child, the child will not be working, will not be, earning a living. What is productivity for a child is play, is going to school. So we really have to consider what is meaningful for a child at that age. So if the child is not attending school, it's really everything that's involved in play. Play is the child's work. It's how children learn. It's their abilities to play and all the elements of that. There can be some household activities that they do, and we'll go into details into all that in terms of a pediatric setting. Leisure, we have quiet recreation, active recreation. So it makes a distinction between quiet activities and more active recreation that involves sports and socialization. So we have to think now in terms of a child. And so let's look first at the top section, the self-care section. Okay, so we will look at these in terms of our children that we see. So let's look first at the personal care. This whole self-care. So personal care for the child is really the toileting, the feeding, the dressing, the undressing, the grooming, the brushing, and so on. All the ings. Everything that you would expect in a daily routine. And for a young child, it might just be the feeding. And eventually, the learning to dress, to undress, to toilet, to even just show that they need to toilet, and grooming, brushing. So that's why these are words that we must keep in mind when addressing that personal care section. We want to ask the family, so how is toileting going? How is feeding? How does your child feeds? And then the family will say, well, I need to feed him, or he feeds himself, or he's able to eat some soft food or solid. So you question, how does your child dress, or does he need help? So you want to have open-ended questions so the family will respond. When we talk about functional mobility, it can be just bed mobility, it could just be rolling, it could be transfers, changing positions. It could also be mobility for self-care, because we have to realize, like for feeding, you can ask also, does your child feed sitting up, and so on. Then when we come to community management, and we will have many case studies to go over all of these after. Community management involves, for a child, dealing with strangers, attending religious cultural events, As they get older, it could be managing transportation, paying for purchases, and it becomes more meaningful as the child gets older. Franzina, do you have any comments on this section here?
No, I think
Not
no,
for now.
not for
Okay,
now.
thank you. Yeah, so that's the whole self-care section. When we get into that second section, which is productivity, of course, a child will not have paid or unpaid work. As they get a bit older, they might do some volunteer work, or they might do some chores around the house, and so that could be relevant. But let's see for this section of the COPM what is relevant for a child, and we will also look at the leisure section. So for a child, the paid or unpaid work, the child's work is play. We want the children to, and that's the way by which children learn. They need to engage in meaningful learning activities. And it can be within the home setting, it could be with peers in the community, it could be when they go to Anganwadi setting, preschool. So it's all their play, how the children play. So as they get older, it could be more meaningful, like gaining training towards employment as they get into the teenage years. And when we talk about household management for a child, it could be just helping in household chores. Children might want to help in the kitchen, or to fold the clothes, or getting them a sense of responsibility and wherever they can. Even a child that has a disability is able to help with household activities. So that may be something the child is really interested in doing, and a goal that can become therapeutic and meaningful. For school and or play, well, attending age-appropriate preschool, school, or any type of educational setting may be a goal. Parents might have a goal that they want their child to be attending preschool or school, but maybe there's skills that are needed to attend that. And leisure, quiet recreation can be watching TV, reading, any type of quiet time. Is there somebody that needs to mute? I'm sorry. So normally quiet recreation or more indoors, can be outdoors also. Active recreation is active games and sports. Can be the child by themselves outdoors, can be individual activities, but often when we talk about active, it can often involve their peers or the siblings. And then all the sports, the child might have a goal that they want to engage in a certain sport. And then socialization, social skills come under leisure, although they could, they could go also in terms of attending school, or so. There's lots of overlap amongst these categories, and what I've indicated here are really just some ideas of how to apply it to a child. So let's look at first identifying the daily problems. So as I said, we want to identify what tasks or activities the child is finding difficult or needs support with. We want to write those selective tasks or activities under the appropriate sections. And then we're going to ask the parents to rate them from 1 to 10 in terms of their priorities. And then we're going to choose which activities we keep as goals. So we want to rate them using the visual scale. I'm going to discuss the rating. And we're going to select them. We're going to rate the performance and satisfaction, and eventually reassessment. So let's look at how we set the goals. When we talk with the parents, we definitely want to look at what seems to be of high importance for them. And when we have our conversation about the everyday activities with the family and all the questions that I mentioned earlier, what about this and what about that? We want to identify what seems of high importance to them, and we will also rate those problems. We want to make sure that the problems are developmentally appropriate. Okay, and if the family seems to mention something that that doesn't seem developmentally appropriate, that the child would be using the toilet and the child is really too young for that, or that they expect the child to be able to get dressed by themselves by a very young age, or be independent for certain skills. We really want to show the family, and also if the child might be of a certain age but not developmentally ready for a skill. So we have to talk to the family about the building blocks. What comes first? First, your child will learn to do this, then they will learn to do that, and eventually they will reach that, your goal. So we really want to determine bite-sized pieces of goals. Goals need to be achievable within the next 6 months to a year. And because the EI app cycles are every 6 months, we try to discuss things within the next 6 months context. Okay, what is achievable within the next 6 months? And then if it's not fully achieved by 6 months, then we can carry those goals for the following cycle to a year. And we have to keep in mind that sometimes goals will be achieved within 3 months. And that's great, or within one, well, yeah, so they can be achieved in a shorter time. And then we can eventually formulate new goals. Goals always have, and problems that we look at always have to involve functional everyday activities or participation. So in the ICF, what we're talking about is within the activity and participation portion of components of the ICF. And lastly, our goals will relate to they may relate to different therapeutic disciplines. There might be some that are more PT related, and some are more speech related, or some are OT. And actually often they will overlap, okay? Because if we want the child to be able to speak, to feed, to dress, they also need sometimes to be able to sit. So you might need a lot of multi-transdisciplinary work to be able to achieve a goal. You might need to look at the environment and to provide assistive devices. So this is what we need to keep in mind when setting our goals. Again, developmental issues we need to think about, and that problems always be developmentally appropriate. So the person who does the COPM, the rehab specialist or whoever does the COPM with the family, is best if they are the person who knows the child and family, a person who is very much aware of all the elements of child development. So you're able to best discuss developmentally appropriate goals for the child with the family. So just a few pictures of this mom. Her goal, one of her goals was for the child to be able to crawl at floor level for mobility at home. So just trying to engage the child, and child was just beginning to hold 4-point and take a few steps. So engaging the child with play for crawling. This one was outdoor mobility and the child did not have a suitable walker. So we were able to achieve that goal through provision of a proper walker for outdoors, and one that had wheels and was good for outdoors. So goal was achieved through assistive devices. This one gained mobility through a tricycle, outdoor mobility through a tricycle, different ways of achieving goals. And that was something the child really wanted to do, was interested in doing, and was showing interest in learning to do. For some, it might be feeding themselves or drinking out of a cup. Some children may need to feed themselves, but with back against the wall for support, may not be able to do it sitting in the middle of the room without support. So those were goals achieved. This one was being able to play with the sibling. So the engagement of the sibling in play with her younger sister. And this was for the child to attend to reading of a book, and to be able to attend for the duration of a reading of a book, and maybe to say the words, and to identify, to be able to identify some items, and to speak and identify them verbally. So I'm just giving you some examples of goals that families had set. And this is, I just put that because this is my Diwali pictures when I was at ASA. This is a true participation goal. It's involvement in meaningful life activities with their peers. So this is fun, it's friends, and it's they're sitting by themselves, they're engaging. And so there's so many activities there. So this is just some thoughts, being able to engage in cultural events. Religious.
Can I add something here, Marie?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think just based on the past 5 or 6 slides, right, that Marie has showed us, we need to understand that the COPM is all about measuring participation in something. As an Indian therapist, I think the mindset is very often the child will be able to do 25 sit-ups in 20 minutes, 3 times a day. But the idea should be the child would be able to improve mobility through transitions, in brackets sit to stand, that will allow engagement with family while doing whatever. So I know it seems nuanced, but I think the past few slides have just shown that there are multiple components that have been addressed through everyday activity. So I think it's about the wording that we use that becomes important in the COPM. But when you're asking questions to the parents, you might need to break it down into something more concrete that they could understand. Like, for example, if he's holding the firecracker, you might need to say, the child would be able to hold something cylindrical, in bracket like a pencil, to enhance academic and social interaction, right? And break it down further for them. We know academics is a big push, but that in itself will allow him to do 25 other things. So please keep that in mind when the difference in what you write versus what you're talking to when you tell the parents about expectations in terms of tasks. Okay, that's just something I wanted to highlight here.
Thank you. Okay, so let's look at how the scoring is done for the either the problems that have been identified, the parent scoring for the COPM. So there's three moments, 3 instances that we're asking parents to score. They will score the importance of each goal to determine their priorities. So once we've listed different, they might want the child to do this, to do that, to do that, we will rate in the right margin, we will indicate the importance of each goal. And we have to realize sometimes they will say, oh, this is a 10. This is so important to me. And this one is a 5, and this one is an 8. It doesn't have to be that this one is, they can all be 10s. And it doesn't have to be that one is 8, one is 9, one is 10, or it doesn't have to be in order. It can just, it's just from their heart. Okay, how important is this problem that you indicated? Okay, so it's just like that one can be 5 and one can be 10, or they can all be 10. Well, you try to not, you just ask them, what does it mean to you, the importance of this goal? Then the other instance where families will rate the performance, the other moment where they will rate the performance, where they will score is for the performance of that goal. And we will look at how we ask about that. And they will also look at how satisfied they are with that goal. And there's a key difference between performance and satisfaction. And we will look at that. Yeah, so when rating the importance, as I mentioned, many goals can have the same importance. It doesn't matter. They, for them, the problem, they might have written a goal of being able to speak a few words, to express for the child to speak, for the child to walk, and for the child to toilet. And it could all be very important for them. It's really how they feel about each goal. Then when we ask them about the performance of each goal, performance is really how well your child is doing this right now. Okay, so to perform, you have to have that key question when you ask them, okay, so your goal is for your child to feed themselves. And we're going to look at different goals in our case studies. So how well is your child doing this right now? And they might say, oh, my child is really doing just like a 2 on 10, or doing a 5 on 10. So it's really the performance rating is really how well is your child doing this now? And then when you go to reassess later, again, it will be how well is your child feeding themselves now? And you want to look at the change. Then when you go to ask about their present satisfaction with the goal, it's how happy are you with how your child's doing this? Okay, it's really how the satisfaction is in their heart, is how their self-perception of how happy they are with their child. Your child might be walking by themselves and walking quite well, but because it's not perfect, they're actually not very happy. So a child might be doing a skill quite well, but parents are not satisfied because it's not good enough. So it's really, it's very interesting to look at the difference between performance and satisfaction. Or a child might also just be starting to roll over. Okay, child has a lot of impairments, just starting to roll over, and actually their performance is not. Performance might be, just a 4 on 10. But parents are very happy. Parents might be very satisfied, might say, yeah, I'm satisfied, like 7 on 10, because he's trying so hard and he's starting to roll, even though it's just partially. I'm very happy with that. So there's not necessarily a situation where performance and satisfaction are same. And we will look at different cases after for this. Franzina, did you have something to add for this? No. Okay. So very important, this, to have those this key question and how to ask about performance. Performance is how well they're doing an activity, and satisfaction is how happy are you about how your child's doing this now. So the scale that we use, it's a numerical scale to assign the importance. Yeah, from 1 to 10. 1 not important, 10 very important. And I mean, you're all familiar with the COPM right now. So those are the 3 moments where we will rate the importance of the problems, the performance, and satisfaction. So you see, for performance, it's the ability to do the activity well. So that's why you ask, how well is he doing it? Satisfaction, I said, how happy are you? You can use how satisfied are you? Whatever you feel and whatever language you're speaking with the family is, you want to convey that meaning of how they feel in their heart, their self-satisfaction with how the child's doing it. So the alternative ways to present it is that sad face, happy face. Often we can use this also when if it's the child themselves that determined the goals. And it just facilitates the understanding of, it's more of a visual. So you can also have both together, where you have this scoring card that has both together, where you have both the numerical and the symbolic rating scale. So the traditional COPM rating cards that we use is this. Okay, and we want, it really helps if you actually have a physical showing the family card to show the numbers. So it's not just asking them, think of numbers from 1 to 10, 10 being the true way of applying the COPM is showing them this physical. It could be on your tablet. It could be where you have this on your tablet and you show them, okay? 1 being not important, 10 being extremely important, or doing, so that you show them visually. Or it could be this, that you show them on your tablet. Okay, now tell me how happy are you, or how your child's doing. So, and then they're able to have this visual in their mind, and to be able to say, yes, it's this, it's this. So I really like the combination of both the numbers and the symbolic. So this really helps to facilitate the rating. Yeah, so again, we're going to, identify the problem, rate the importance of the problem. And they say once the parent has identified many problems or many goals in their daily life that they want, the COPM officially, they say you can choose up to 5 most important problem. I find that 5 can be a lot. So sometimes you might choose, and I mean, some may be smaller achievable goals, and some might be goals that relate to another goal. You can decide to choose 3 or 4, and also often when we tell families is that all goals will be, you will keep in mind everything that's meaningful to them, like the conversation you had with the families and everything you've documented, that those will be incorporated. You don't drop a goal because it's not as important. You will keep those in mind, but you try to, if the family has listed many, many goals, you try to narrow down with their priority rating that what is important to them. You try to narrow down to 3 or 5. Yeah, so let's just look at an example here. These parents, these are just fictitious parents. They've identified that they wanted their child to move in and around a room independently. They wanted the child to express his basic needs through words. And they wanted the child to perform upper and lower body dressing. And they wanted the child to eat without assistance. Okay, so those are fictitious goals. So, and that we identified in the course of our interview with the family. So we rated those problems that the child was having difficulty. Those were problems that the child was having difficulty moving around the room, was not yet expressing his basic needs through words, that those were parents' wishes that the child would perform dressing and would eat without assistance. And then I asked the family, okay, so I'd like to see how important these problems are to you. What is most important to you? So from 1 to 10. So moving around the room, they identified that one was a 6 on 10. They would like the child to be able to move more on their own, but they can still move if we help the child. So the child is still mobile, but with assistance, but they would like to have some, that it be independent. In terms of expressing needs through words, that was 8 on 10. That was important, that the child starts to use words. In terms of upper lower body dressing, it was just a 5 on 10. The child is undressing themselves and is starting to dress, but it's okay. We can still help the child dress. So it's not as important. So they are dressing, they are helping him with dressing. So they rated that 5 on 10, that would be an important goal, but not as important as other goals. And then when we asked about eating without assistance, they said that's a 10. That's very important for them. It's a child to be able to eat on his own. So I just want to give you an example of how parents may rate the importance of some goals. Okay, so and you discuss with them. So then all of those problems that have been identified, we then put them into the priority that they were identified, and those will become the COPM goals, problems or goals to be worked on, and those will be the ones that will be rated for performance and satisfaction. So I've just ordered them in the priority of the parents choosing. Okay, so this is what is important to the parents in the order of the priority that parents decided. So this was just, I just wanted to show you an example of the importance rating. So this is the scoring form that you all have a version of this within the app. Yeah, so yeah, this we've already gone over. We're going to go through some cases. One thing to keep in mind, yeah, this is, I know there's a lot here. I just want you to keep in mind when the parents choose a goal or a problem, let's say that it was to be able to eat independently if the food is presented to them. Okay, so we just want to keep in mind that one goal of eating independently, there are so many components that are involved in achieving that goal. Okay, so we want to realize that it's one goal is not necessarily just a PT goal, an OT goal, a speech goal, a special education goal. It involves the whole team, and we want to look at that goal. What is needed to achieve that goal? There's so many. There's the motor aspect. There's the ability to sit for eating, and the child might need to have a seating support. There's the difficulty in taking the food with their hands. There's the ability to chew. There's and there's also the understanding of the food. There's the communication that might be involved. There's some sensory issues that might be involved with the child refusing the food. There's might be issues of the biting and chewing and swallowing. So we have to look at, and maybe I will engage our OT Franzina here, that you might need some postural devices, adapted utensils. There's so many things to keep in mind of who needs to contribute to that goal in terms of rehab specialists. Franzina, can I engage you here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as I think an Indian therapist myself, it's really easy for us to work in isolation, right? But I think what the COPM does is forces you to think of the bigger picture, and how feeding is, you know, the OT and physio working on trunk control, you know, the OT working on shoulder stability and distal hand control. You could have a speech therapist working on the suck swallow. You could have the OT working on oral desensitization if there are sensory issues. So though there are many therapists that come together to work on a particular goal, it's equally important for a clear picture to be created where all the therapists have consensus on, you know, what the final goal is and how it's contributed to making the goal better. So you have a whole number, right, at the end of it. Does this make sense? I know we've not been asking questions, but the idea is you have a big goal, but each of the components are smaller, and you work towards fulfilling those small pieces to make it whole again. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions about this? Because it's really broken down, right? This is simplified a lot. But I feel like, Marie, do you want to wait for questions at the end, or since we're doing...
No, that's fine. And this is very analytical here.
Right. It's goal setting, right?
But the point is just to get everyone thinking. You don't need to do this, but you need to, in your mind, when you're setting a goal, to realize everything that's involved in a goal. So an eating goal is not simply opening your mouth and eating. There's so many all the other components. It's how the child's supported and the sensory and so there's just to keep in mind the contributions that are needed from various team members for this. It's a really multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary approach. Oh, there's somebody that drew on my slide. Okay. Yeah, so that's why we also, the other thing is that when parents say eat independently, okay, we need to discuss with family, what do they mean by independent completely? Like, do you, like, so to discuss independence, okay? So like you want, so, because sometimes what a family thinks as independence is not necessarily what you might think. So, so it's just good to review. So please tell me what you mean by independent. So maybe they'll say yes, that they will be able to just do this activity on their own, or they might say they will be able to do it, but I will guide them, or I will give them the food, or I will help them with, like, to use the toilet independently. Yes, but I will be with them, and I will assist them if they. So it's just good to verbalize what they see, as to ask them what the independence will mean to them. Okay, and finally, we're going to look at how the reassessment process is. Just, you ask them to rate again the performance and satisfaction, and see how it changes. But we're going to be doing some case studies now to look at how that is done. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at a few case studies. And these are some are fictitious names, fictitious cases. Well, some, I mean, the pictures are true children, but their goals are fictitious in some cases. Okay, so we have Ishant, who's 2 years old, cerebral palsy, spastic quadriplegia, GMFCS level 4, has cortical visual impairment, lives with parents and grandparents, only child, lives in a small village home. So I'm just going to jump right away to what parents identified as problems through the COPM and goals. So things that were meaningful to them, what they wanted the child to be able to do. And this is child with cortical visual impairment, was to be able to look and reach for a small bright object in his hands for play, with his hands for play. So the child was just starting to discriminate objects, colored objects, was to be able to start reaching for a bright objects for play. A second goal that was meaningful to them and really was to hold his head, to start holding his head, to look at parents' face. And parents, yeah, and again, that's a good visual stimuli for short periods and supported sitting. So the child, we made the goal so that it would be the child would start holding his head, but would be in a supported sitting, because we had to tell parents, we will need to have that goal with you supporting him in sitting. And eventually the child got a seating device. But so we need to sometimes write the goals, so define the goals better so that it's achievable. And lastly was to roll for floor mobility. It was very important for them to roll for floor mobility, even though we explained to families that the child might just start like one roll at a time. It might not be across the room. So we explained this might be a longer term goal. It might take longer than 6 months. So we rated the goals. So the performance of reaching for a bright object was a 3 at first. So, and parents were satisfied. The child was just starting to reach. So it was scored as a 5 for their satisfaction. Then after 6 months, the child learned to be able to reach towards a bright object with his hands, and was performing at a 7. And actually parent satisfaction, even though, yeah, there was a very nice increase that the child was starting to visually discriminate and try to reach towards the object. So parents were actually very happy because they saw that not only did that mean that hands were upper extremity function coming to midline, but it also meant that visually the child was starting to engage with his environment. So there were two components there, the visual and the motor. So parents are very satisfied. So 9 satisfaction after 6 months. When we look at goal number 2, to hold the head, to look at parents, but in a supported sitting position, the child really had very poor head control at the beginning. So a 2 performance. So when we ask how well is your child holding their head up right now, when you support them, they said the child's head was falling a 2 on 10. And parents were satisfied 5 on 10 for holding the head because they saw the child was trying to hold the head, but it would fall constantly. They saw the child was trying to hold it, but the child just could not lift against gravity. So even though the lifting the head was just a 2, parents were still satisfied 5 on 10 because they saw the child was trying to lift that head. Eventually, the child was starting to hold the head up in a vertical position by 6 months. So it was scored a 6. So parents were very happy. So 8 on 10. When we asked them, how happy are you with how the child's holding the head? It was an 8 on 10. In terms of the rolling, the child was really not rolling at all at the beginning. So 1. And parents were also 4 on 10 happy with that. Again, these were very positive outlook parents. They were seeing in their child the child trying to move. So even though the child was not rolling, they gave a 4 on 10 on satisfaction because they saw the child was trying to initiate rolling. And then after 6 months, the child was rolling partway. At times, some days were good, some days were bad, starting to initiate some rolling, so 5 on 10. And parents, actually, their satisfaction was 8. So see, in this case, the parent satisfaction was always higher than the performance because they were parents that were really looking at everything the child was trying to do and having a positive outlook, that they were very happy that to see the changes in their child, the child was starting to do a skill. So that's for Ishan. Let's look at our next little one, Suba. Okay, so Suba is 3.5 years old. She has cerebral palsy, spastic diplegia, GMFCS level 3. So she lives with her parents, older brother, grandparents, and she lives in a 1-level house with irregular grounds around the house. So the goals that the family identified were for her to walk indoors for function and also short distances outdoors with support, for socialization with neighborhood friends. So they really put a lot of elements there. There was the element of function and socialization and participation. So there's a lot into this goal. And actually this goal could have been made into 2 goals. It could have been, the walking indoors for function, like to get the places indoors. And there could have been also walking outdoors with support. And also there's a socialization element there. So there's times that we can, this is quite a complex goal. There could have been separate goals formed there, because in this situation, she might achieve part of the goal, but not achieve the other portion. So you see that goal is, there's a lot there. There's a socialization with neighborhood friends. There's the outdoors, walking outdoors with support. There's the indoors for function. So just to indicate here that it could be separate bite-sized piece goals. Goal 2 was to participate at meal times and eat dosa with her hands, sitting on the floor with her family. So again, this is a actually very well-written goal. It's not just to eat a dosa. Sometimes you have some people therapists who will just write a goal is to eat, to walk, to sit. And we want to get away from just one word. A one-word goal is not a goal. And it should be in what context, what position, with whom. Okay, it has to be a SMART goal. Okay, so this is a very nicely goal, is to participate at meal times and eat. We didn't say just to eat. We said to eat what? Okay, is it to eat rice? Is it to eat dosa? Is it something that's a solid food? Is it soft food? So we're specifically stating to eat dosa with hands. And it's not to eat with a spoon, it's to eat with hands. We're saying the position, so sitting on the floor, and it's in presence of her family. So excellent goal. Goal 3, to express her needs using short sentences. Okay. And if we wanted, we could have said to express her needs to her parents if we wanted to have it more precise. But here we're just leaving it open to express her needs in general. Using short sentences. So just different ways to write a goal. And you see the goal number 2, maybe mom just said, I want her to eat dosa. Okay. So to formulate the goal, I said, okay, what position is she going to be? You're going to be eating, sitting on the floor. So we try to be more precise. Okay, so let's do the scoring. So scoring of Suba's goals. So to walk indoors, yes, our complex goal number 1, she was just starting to do, again, it's hard to lump, when we have so many goals in one, it's hard to determine the performance because there's too many elements there. So it was a 3 on 10 for performance, for how well she was doing that, and how happy parents were, 5 on 10, because they saw she was starting to become mobile, indoors, outdoors, and also some socialization with friends. So they were happy because they were seeing some change. She became, after 6 months, a 6 on 10, moving indoors. So here, maybe she was walking indoors, but outdoors she needed more help. And maybe it was the socialization that was not so much. So again, it's hard to rate a goal that has too many components. But somehow parents were parent satisfaction did not change. It remained the 5 on 10. When we asked family, how happy are you with how she's doing? Even though she improved on how well she was doing, parents were not satisfied because they felt she should have improved more in that time. They were not satisfied because maybe they felt she should now be doing more walking outside or in the house, or she was not socializing as much as they would have wanted. So I just want to show you how, even though she improved on how well she's doing it, when we ask parents, how happy are you? They were actually no change. So that's why it's very important to distinguish between the two and have that conversation with family. Okay, so let's talk about why you're not so satisfied, why you're not so happy about how she's doing now. Which part of it is that you feel you're not as happy with? So just to show you how parents might be satisfied differently. So eating dosa, So she's 4 on 10. They were satisfied. 6 on 10. And I forgot to write the performance, but let's say it was an 8. And there they were super happy with how she was, you know, because eating and she was independent, super happy for that one. Whereas they were not very happy with her mobility and socialization. Okay, and expressing her needs, again, you see the change. Her performance went from 5 to 8, but look at that, their satisfaction actually went down. Okay, so why? Again, maybe they felt their expectations were that she would be expressing with short sentences throughout the day, and that she would have a variety of words, and maybe their expectations were too high. But they actually said, yes, when I asked how well is she doing this, yes, she's doing it well, but they expected her almost maybe to be talking normally by now, and their expectations were too high. So anyways, just a thought that performance and satisfaction do not necessarily go hand in hand, and we need to have a conversation with families of why. And sometimes we need to redefine the goals, rewrite the goals. Let's look at our Nisha, who has autism. 4-year-old, and she lives with her mother, and she attends kindergarten school, and so parents were identifying skills that were needed to. Jupiter, we see where you are, you're outside. So the goals for Nisha were goals that would be preschool preparatory skills needed to attend kindergarten, because she was going to be attending kindergarten very soon. So let's look at the goals that were identified. So goals identified were to be able to eat tiffin items by himself, should be by herself, with only minimal prompting by teachers. So sometimes it's fine to write a goal that the child will need some assistance or some verbal prompts for a goal to be achieved. It's fine to be able to define that the child may need some support, some assistance, some prompting. So it was important to learn to eat some tiffin items, because that would be something that she would be doing when she goes to kindergarten at snack time. Goal number 2 was to express her needs to use the toilet, pain or discomfort verbally to the teacher. Mom was very worried about the child needing to use the toilet, and also if the child had any pain or discomfort, to be able to express. Those were important needs that the mother wanted the child to be able to express to the teacher. And number 3 was to play some games like ball throw and hide and seek with the cousins. So this was a goal that was not kindergarten related, but actually would prepare her for playing with peers when she attends kindergarten. And she would practice those skills with her cousin. And we also put a time element that she would play for about 10 minutes, which may be a long period of time. We could say sometimes play even for 5 minutes to start short periods of time. So let's rate this. So rating Nisha, oops, okay. So to eat tiffin items, she was starting to eat some items, 3 on 6. Mom was happy to see that she was starting to take some different items with some verbal prompts, thinking she might need some verbal prompts from the teacher. And by the end of the 6 months, 7 out of 10, she was performing for eating the tiffin items, and mom was very happy. She felt that if she was prompted by the teachers at kindergarten, she would be able to participate and eat when in the preschool setting. When it comes to expressing needs to use the toilet, pain or discomfort, it was only a 2 on 10. So mom was very concerned that she wouldn't be ready to do those skills of using toilet or expressing pain when attending kindergarten. By the time of reassessment, she was 6 on 10. And then the parents again scored just 3 on 10. So because mom had a lot of worries that she needed to be completely independent for toilet, for attending kindergarten. So that's why we needed to have a discussion that, yes, maybe there would need to be more support from the teachers for things like toileting and so on. So again, the satisfaction of how happy the mother was for goal number 2 came from the mother's worries about how she would be able to function fully within the kindergarten setting. For the goal number 3, to be able to play games with her cousins, ball throw, hide and seek, she really socially was not just starting to engage with others in the game setting. So mother was 6 on 10. Then she improved. She was able to engage for short periods of time in play. Mom again was 6 on 10. So there are times where we need to have a conversation, and there needs to be sometimes, those are cues that parents need sometimes more support for the parents to be able to go through understanding of that the child has made some improvements and get them to see those improvements. And also if there's anxiety on the part of the parents of the child not being able to function in another setting, like a kindergarten setting, we need to discuss that and to have the supports in place. Now we have our last little guy, Kartik. He's 7. He has a developmental disability, lives with the parents, younger sister, and grandparents. So the goals that the parents set for Kartik was to attend his class at least 2 periods each day, to play hide and seek and duck goose games with his friends for 15 minutes, and to express his basic needs by single words at home or in school whenever required. Okay, because he had a significant speech delay, but they really wanted him to at least to express his basic needs with the single words. He was starting to be sociable, so that and to engage in games with friends. So, and just plans to attend school. So let's see now our rating for Kartik. So at first, he was just getting introduced to school, and mother really wanted him to start attending more frequently. She really was not happy with the fact that he could not attend school. 6 months later, supports had been put in place to support him. There was a lot of awareness programs were done in the school, a lot of education done with the teachers and so on, and the peers, and he was attending school 7 out of 10. 2 periods per day most of the time. Sometimes it was not possible because sometimes there wasn't supports, but 7 out of 10, he was attending school, and mom was very happy with the success, and the school was engaged, and supports were in place. The goal number 2, he was starting to play with his games with his friends for short periods of time. And mom was scored how happy she was with that, just 4 out of 10. She wished she could play more. He went to 7 on 10 after 6 months, was really engaging more with peers, and mom was quite happy, 8 on 10. In terms of expressing his basic needs by single words, he was just at times using a word, other times just pointing or just using nonverbal, so just 3 on 10. Mom was, no, and I'm always saying mom, it could be dad. It could be dad, it could be the whole family, grandparents also. It should be the same person rating, but it could be another family member. So by the end of 6 months, he was starting to use single words much more frequently to express his needs at home and at school. So mom was happy, 9 on 10. So just a reminder that wherever you are, whatever corner of India you are, wherever country you are in the world, the COPM can be used if you put yourself, it's in the person's, in the family's cultural setting. And you have to consider the cultural environment of each family. Each family is different wherever you are. And you have to ask them about their own expectations and what they are expecting the child to do, their own requirements for functional activities within their cultural context. The COPM is meant to be culturally adaptable, but the therapist needs to be aware of the views of disability in that particular setting. How that family views disability. So you have to be, of course, if you are within that setting, you have to know how perceptions of disability. So all this to say that the COPM is only as good as the therapist who's presenting it, and really having a good discussion with the parents or with the child about what is meaningful to them. So that's just my last few words, and I will open it up to the floor to any questions or discussion. And I hope I was being clear with my cell phone. My arm is, I've been holding my phone.
That worked really well.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I need to fix my technical issues later. So we will now have our whole, and I realized I didn't have time to show you the app itself. Well, you know the app. So, and the scoring within the app is as I showed you on the screen. Because I realize our 2 hours is up, but I would like to open it up to any comments, questions that you have. I hope this has been helpful. Anyone?
Thank you, Mary ma'am. Here I am Pawan from Kiran Society, and
Yes.
we are really thankful to you, the way you express and the way you explain the COPM. I think it will be very helpful for our specialists, because just last month we had our first assessment, and there was some issue with the therapist because they were not aware with this COPM. So it was the first time introduced in our system. So by your this presentation, I think it is very much clear for all the specialists. And from Kiran Society, we are really very thankful to you for giving this opportunity to our specialists, and really thankful
Thank you
to
so much,
our.
Pawan. Thank you so much. Yeah, very good. I've been using the COPM since it started, I guess the past 20 years or a long time. And they say the COPM is an OT, occupational therapy tool, but I'm a physiotherapist, and I've been using it because physiotherapists need to be functional too. I was using it along with OTs, and it's really looking at the whole, the total child, the total, what is meaningful in life. So, and you have to know how to present it to families to get the best information possible. So thank you very much, Pawan, for your comments.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I apologize for my audio problems at the beginning.
No issue, ma'am.
Okay.
It was really very informative, and it was very audible for all of them.
Very what?
It was not interrupting. I mean, it was very audible and it was very clear
Audible.
for us.
Okay. Thank
there was
you.
no such kind of issue, ma'am.
Great. Thank you. That's great. And you will have the recording also after.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. Nandri. Any other comments or Franzina? Yeah, anybody? Franzina?
I think this was extremely thorough. So I think if there are specific questions in terms of, the language to be used, or how do you score something in particular, if the participants have specific questions like that, I'm sure we could answer them, even if they are emailed at a later point, right, Marie?
Yeah, anytime. Please feel free. Any queries that you have,
maybe Celine can compile a list of questions. If you guys do have it, please send it to him and we can help answer.
That's a great idea.
And we will send you also, Celine will be sending you a feedback form for this webinar, just to give us, it's a quick one, just to give us feedback on how this was, and also feedback for future webinars. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, because it's really important that this family-centered goal setting tool be used well. It's really to the benefit of the family and benefit of the therapist, so that we all work towards goals that are meaningful to the families. And I hope I also conveyed to you how parents might rate their satisfaction with a goal differently than how the child's performing. Okay, so I will close it now. And I think Celine, we will.
Do you have any doubts? Please ask with them.
Okay. Okay, so thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Okay,
ma'am.
you're welcome. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.